All right, let's get into it. This is a story that spans 70 years, a story about how Iran and the United States went from being pretty close allies to, well, what they are today, bitter enemies. And it's a wild ride, full of oil, spies, revolution, and a power struggle that is still shaping our world.
So, you've probably noticed, right? You can't really get through a week of news without hearing something about Iran. There's always some tension, some new headline. But why? What is actually going on behind all that noise? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is how Iran chooses to fight its battles. See, it supports groups all over the Middle East. You've got Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestine, the Houthis in Yemen. It's their way of fighting their enemies without actually fighting them directly. It's a whole network of allies that really challenge the status quo. At the exact same time, Iran is under just immense pressure. For decades now, the US has been hitting them with these crippling economic sanctions. The goal? To totally isolate the country, to bring its economy to its knees. And yet, Iran is still standing. It's still pushing its own agenda on the world stage. And that brings us to the biggest, most nerve-wracking issue of them all, the nuclear program. Is it for peaceful energy, or is it for a weapon? That one question has created this incredibly high-stakes standoff that keeps pretty much the entire world on edge. So to really get how we ended up here, we have to go back, way back, to a time when things looked totally different. Believe it or not, Iran and the US were once good friends. Seriously. Back in the middle of the 20th century, their alliance was basically built on two things: a shared enemy in the Soviet Union and a whole lot of oil. I mean, the difference between the Iran of the past and the Iran of today is really like night and day. You had the Shah's Iran, pro-American, a monarchy trying to be secular and modern. And then you have the Islamic Republic we know now, a religious theocracy where being anti-American is like a core part of its identity. So what on earth happened to cause such a complete 180? It really starts with a guy named Reza Shah. He and his son, the Pahlavi dynasty, they pushed for this super fast, top-down westernization. We're talking European-style clothes, discouraging the veil for women. It was a very secular vision, and it totally welcomed Western business, especially after they discovered just how much oil was under their feet. And this is where we get to the first huge, critical turning point. This is the moment that for many Iranians changed everything and planted these really deep seeds of resentment against America. We're talking about the 1953 coup. Okay, let's break this down real quick. In 1951, Iran's popular, democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, he does something audacious. He nationalizes Iran's oil industry. Basically, he took it back from the British. Britain and the US were not happy. First, they hit Iran with a global boycott and sanctions. When that didn't work, the CIA and Britain's MI6 literally staged a coup, kicked out the democratically elected leader, and put their guy, the Shah, back on the throne with absolute power. And this right here is the heart of the matter. For the sake of oil interests, the US and Britain got rid of a democracy and installed a dictator. This single event is often called the original sin in the relationship. To a lot of Iranians, it was proof that all the American talk about freedom and democracy was just talk. It created this wound that would just fester for the next quarter century. And oh, did it fester. For the next 25 years, the Shah ruled with an iron fist, and he was backed the whole time by the United States. But bubbling just under the surface of all that forced modernization, that resentment was boiling over. You know, it was really only a matter of time before it all just exploded. And the face of all that anger became this one charismatic, exiled cleric, Ayatollah Khomeini. From outside Iran, his powerful speeches, attacking the Shah and his American supporters, were recorded onto cassette tapes and smuggled into the country. You could say they went viral 1970s style. And it worked. Millions of Iranians, both religious and secular, poured into the streets. It was just too much to contain. In January 1979, the Shah fled the country. Just a few weeks later, Khomeini returned to a massive hero's welcome, ready to build a brand new Iran. Now, the revolution itself was a huge shock to the US, but what happened next would poison the relationship for generations to come. 444, remember that number. That's how many days 52 American diplomats and citizens were held hostage after student revolutionaries stormed the US embassy in Tehran. The hostage crisis. That was the point of no return. It just completely shattered any chance of normal relations. And it cemented the image of the United States as the great Satan, right into the core ideology of the new Islamic Republic. The friendship wasn't just over, it had turned into this deep, lasting hatred.
So, the 1979 revolution didn't just transform Iran, it completely blew up the old playbook for the entire Middle East. Suddenly, Iran wasn't a pillar of American strategy anymore. No, it was now America's biggest challenger in the region, setting the stage for a whole new kind of Cold War. Almost immediately after the revolution, Iraq's Saddam Hussein, who was backed by the US and a lot of other countries, invaded Iran. The war that followed was brutal, devastating, and lasted for 8 long years. But it also taught Iran's new leaders a very important lesson. You never want to fight a direct war against a stronger enemy if you can help it. A much better way is to fight your enemies through others. And that is the birth of their proxy strategy.
This revolution also kicked off a new rivalry for really the soul of the Middle East. You have Iran, a mostly Shia nation, directly challenging the traditional leader of the Muslim world, the Sunni kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is a major U.S. ally. Iran saw itself as this new revolutionary force, and it used its much larger population as leverage to spread its influence in this new regional Cold War.
So now you have Iran feeling surrounded by powerful enemies, the US, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Its leaders decided they needed the ultimate insurance policy, something that would absolutely guarantee that their government could survive an attack from anyone. And that insurance policy was a nuclear program. Okay, and here's why everyone gets so nervous about this. To build a nuclear bomb, you need uranium enriched to about 90%. Right now, Iran has gotten its uranium enriched up to 60%. Now, that doesn't mean they have a bomb, not at all. But it does mean they are uncomfortably close to having the main ingredient. And it's that closeness that makes this whole issue such a dangerous flashpoint. So let's tie all of this together. You've got the historical anger from the 1953 coup, you've got the revolutionary ideology, you've got the hard lessons learned from the Iran-Iraq war, and you've got the nuclear program as an insurance policy. It all comes together in Iran's modern-day strategy, what we call the proxy game. What Iran has built today is something it calls the Axis of Resistance, and it's basically this big network of militias and political groups stretching all across the Middle East. You've got Hezbollah right on Israel's border, the Houthis in Yemen messing with global shipping, Hamas in Palestine, and all sorts of militias in Iraq and Syria. They all act as Iran's extended reach. And from their perspective, the logic is kind of brilliant. This network lets Iran push back against its adversaries, the US, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and fight for regional power, but all while keeping some distance. It lets them wage war without officially being at war. It lets them avoid a direct, head-to-head fight that they know they would almost certainly lose. And that brings us to the big question for today. On one hand, Iran has this very clever, very effective proxy strategy. But on the other hand, its economy is an absolute wreck from decades of sanctions, and its people are really struggling. So the question is, can this strategy of fighting through others actually win this long, grinding conflict against the massive economic and military power of the United States? That is the question at the very heart of this 70-year-old feud.